Welcome everyone to Half History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and after a year of suspense, I am completing the Battle of Shiloh that I started last year. When we last left off, Sherman had found Grant, and they discussed the offensive that they would launch the next morning. On the Confederate side, the bloody day gave way to a night of restlessness. Beauregard moved his headquarters to Shiloh Church and summoned his commanders to that location. They congratulated him on his great victory and the conclusion of that victory the next day. Beauregard's actions demonstrated a lack of preparation. His orders to the men on the front line was to fall back a safe distance from the enemy and bivouac for the night. The cavalry were sent forward to make sure he was notified if the enemy approached. Finally, he ordered the commander at Corinth to form the stragglers into companies and regiments and send them to the battlefield. The Confederate troops, although exhausted, enjoyed themselves in the abandoned camps of the Union soldiers. A soldier from Missouri wrote, "Everything a soldier could want, to which we helped ourselves. We ate their grub and slept in their cots as quietly as if we had no enemy in 100 miles. Ammunition wasn't distributed even though cartridge boxes were empty. No significant defenses were thrown up. The Southern Army acted as though the battle was over and victory had been secured. However, most soldiers did not sleep as easily as the man from Missouri. Many of us could not sleep that night for talking over the happenings and incidents of the day," wrote a Tennessean. "A goodly number of our friends had been killed or wounded, and we were busy till a late hour loading up and hunting for our missing comrades and friends who had fallen. Many sad rehearsals of where this and that one had fallen." Throughout the night, the Union gunboats sent shells through the air, preventing either side from getting any sleep and adding to the anxiousness felt by the soldiers of both sides. Nathan Bedford Forrest, just a colonel at this point, was patrolling the front of the Confederate line, and he spied Buell's forces crossing the river. He even sent Confederate soldiers in blue uniforms into the Union lines to obtain more intelligence. He reported the happenings multiple times, but no one would listen. And he wasn't the only one seeing the Union forces grow throughout the night, but the warnings were not heeded. The actions of each army on the night of April 6th would decide the next day's battle. The rain poured down upon soldiers both blue and gray, and the thunder roared alongside the artillery of the gunboats. But as dawn approached, the storm began to pass. Because of its advanced placement at the end of April 6th, Pond's brigade was still on the front lines throughout the night because he did not receive word to pull back, and he knew the importance of his brigade to the Confederate left flank. It would be Pond's men that came into contact with the Union juggernaut first. Pond's artillery and the Union guns dueled for an hour from 5:30 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. As they threw shot and shell at one another, Grant rode over to Wallace and gave him his orders for the day. Wallace would constitute the extreme right wing of the Union Army and outflank any defenders in his way. The appearance of stiff resistance by Pond's men convinced Wallace to move slowly and cautiously toward the Confederate defenders at 6:30 a.m. It took him over 2 hours to cross Tilghman Branch and swing his division into line on the north end of Jones Field. Pond's brigade and Ketchum's battery performed a well-conducted withdrawal before Wallace's men could bring them to battle. Ketchum held the front line while Pond's infantry traversed the landscape to join the rest of the Confederate army. Wallace paused at the north end of the field because the divisions of Sherman, Hurlbut, and McClernand hadn't moved to secure his left flank. Buell on the far left of the Union line was also moving slowly south, but it was mostly due to the terrain and the muddy mess created by the rain. As his men went through the former day's bloody fields, they found W.H.L. Wallace still alive. He was rushed to the rear where his wife was overjoyed to find her husband still among the living and the reports about his death being false. Buell's troops moved out from Pittsburgh Landing and crossed Dill Branch Ravine. His entire force was finally in position around 9 a.m. He had encountered a few skirmishers from Forrest's cavalry, but no heavy resistance. The two Union wings were exposed out in the open without their center. Finally, Sherman, Hurlbut, and McClernand moved out. It was 10 a.m. before the entire Union army had formed a stable line to confront the enemy. The Confederate line was a jumbled mess. One contemporary wrote, "The Confederate line resembled a shuffled pack of cards in which none adjoins its next in suit except by chance." Beauregard attempted to place troops in anticipation of Grant's move south, and Confederate soldiers came from all over the battlefield to form their lines. One Kentucky soldier named John Caldwell was looking over the wounded and dead when he was ordered to fall in. The following is his account. But before I go, I must look upon the faces of my noble dead. I have seen them again. The flaxen hair of little Tom Caldwell is matted over his once sunny face. Poor Land's face is so blackened by wound and forehead that I would not have known him but for wound and dress. Chestnut is calm as if sleeping. George Small's face is dark and lowering. The light of battle has faded from his face. My noble friend Casey appears to have been in great pain when he died. How I pity his family. Smith seems to have died easy. Johnson appeared calm. Tom Lyle suffered greatly, shot through the bowels. Walker suffered a great deal, but endured it like a man. Kennerly was in great misery, shot in bowel. John Pillow died last night. What a message I have for his family. Tell my mother I died like a soldier. It's an account like this that makes us realize that each soldier knew one another well in their own companies, regiments, and brigades, and after such a large battle, this kind of reflection was a common occurrence on both sides. Nevertheless, Beauregard cobbled together a defensive line that was poorly prepared for what awaited them.